Yes. Is it a game changer if a person sets up the entity as a sole proprietor or a S corp, or does it matter to us how that is set up, so far as affecting their business trade lines and how they are able to accumulate funds?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question, Kirk. We could probably, if we really wanted to, not that we will, but if we really wanted to, there's probably a couple of people I could call and we could turn that into a 1 or 2 hour discussion if we really wanted to. Obviously, we don't need to do that, and certainly not today. So the answer is yes and no. So Kirk's question is, when a entrepreneur, small business owner forms an entity, entity could be a C corp, they could do an S election, it could be an LLC, or what's been more common historically, let's say over the last 50 years. If you look at the last 50 years, maybe not the last decade, then sole proprietors have been, by quite a long shot, the most common form of, small business structuring. Obviously, in the last decade or so, probably because of, pretty good reasons, there's a lot more people forming entities now than there was previously. And if you were to sneak into the database of LegalZoom or Inc. Authority or one of these companies that forms entities on behalf of their clients, most of the time they're going to be well over 80% of the entities formed are going to be LLCs. Most of the time they're going to somewhere in the 90% range of the entities that are being formed are usually going to be LLCs. Now, granted, if you are an attorney and you only do corporate work and you also form entities, that wouldn't be true for you because you have a very an interesting and not representative of the whole kind of audience, right? And so LLCs are by far the most common entities that are formed. But from the perspective of financing, Kirk, I think a lot of people give you different kind of opinions on this, but you can have any of those entities to get your unsecured funding. You can be a sole prop, you can be an LLC, you can be an S corp, you can be a C corp, any of those entities. We do have a fair amount of data behind the scenes that we can kind of parse and look at, and I can tell you that a little bit there's a little bit of a difference to where C corporations do have performed, say, 5% better in terms of the amount of unsecured funding that they obtain compared to an LLC, and the LLCs oftentimes can perform better than your sole props. I will also kind of mention this because it's an important thing that if I were all of you, I would want to know this because it's a fact of something that does happen often in the marketplace. If you're in a competitive environment, kind of selling against some of our quote competitors, one of the ways, some of you, I can't remember if we talked about it, but one of our legacy competitors was shut down last year by the FTC. I mean, showed up and said, guess what, guys, you're out of business, and here's why. And one of the practices that is still used by others in the marketplace is a practice of forming a sole proprietorship and then using that sole proprietorship to go after 0% credit card money. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem, or where it becomes problematic, that was run into with the company that was shut down and that's still alive in the marketplace, is that then with a sole proprietor, the lender would have no way of knowing how long you've been in business.